Hi, I'm Subhadra. I am a yoga teacher, wellness coach, producer, mother of four, and the owner of Yoga Angels International. This is Strip to the Naked Truth podcast. Well, hello there. My name is Subhadra, and I'm here on the podcast of Strip to the Naked Truth. What is Strip to the Naked Truth? Well, this podcast is all about taking your inner voice and revealing it to yourself and become naked to who you truly are. Because, as we all know, journeying on earth tend to come with a lot of trial, tribulations, challenges, opportunities, loads of joy, but loads of sadness. It just has a lot of emotional ups and downs, and the whittles and the winds, the swerves and the curves. Now, my life was exactly that. Ups, downs, whittles, swerves, curves, and maybe a lot of it. I don't know if it's any more than anybody else's, but I tell you what, by the time I got to a certain level of my life, I had to come up with a title of how I was going to assimilate it in this body and get a true understanding of who I am. And that's when Strip to the Naked Truth was born. Of course, the title says a lot. It's about my life, where I found myself stripping down physically, also internally, spiritually, and naturally coming back to who I truly am. And this is who I think I am. I'm sitting here talking to you, but I'm going to share some stories with you and at the same time tell you how I overcome trials, tribulations. What are the things that I found in my life? What are the tools I apply and how I became me, how I found me, how I remembered who I am. And so, Strip to the Naked Truth is born. So what am I going to talk about today? Exciting. From the age 0 to around 9, a lot of what I would like to say in our lives happen. Places where we pause and we take pictures and then formulate who you've become. Whether you know you're doing this consciously or it's happening subconsciously, it's happening. But then we kind of put ourselves in a brick mode as if this is who we are, and we move forward and trot along until we decide that this no longer fits and we do not want to stay in that mold. And then we remold ourselves, redesign ourselves, recreate, and we're born of a new self, which means you got to die of the whole self. Very uncomfortable indeed. So today we're talking about 0 to 9, and I'm going to tell you some stories. It was kind of wild. I was born and raised in Jamaica, spicy land. I say I was hailed in Jamaica, kind of hauled up. It's a bit of a rough start. However, needless to say, there was always abundance too. But let's talk about 0 coming in, kind of came in on a rough paternity fraud ride. And paternity fraud in my country is very, 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 very popular. I mean, I'm talking about it like it's ice cream, but it's not. But it is popular in Jamaica. Paternity fraud is when we simply call it a jacket. And what that means is when you put on a jacket that doesn't really fit you, it's not really yours, that's what we call paternity fraud, where a man will be then given the identity of a child that's not really his. So we lie to the man, we tell the man that this is your child, and it is not. And therefore this, you can only imagine its repercussion and all the people who is involved, especially when the naked truth come out. Oh Lord, that's how I rolled in. I rolled in on paternity fraud. Now, I take all these things for jokes, so please, don't get too serious and don't get too sad when some really, maybe challenging stories come up. I want you to smile through it because that's what I've done, and I've found who I am. Therefore, it's all a ha-ha-ha moment to me. Unless, of course, I get some tears. That comes too. But after the tears, I always find the joy again to rebuild, re-strengthen, and understand what it's all about. My mom and my dad, as we know it, now we know I came in on paternity fraud. By the way, my Jamaican is going to come out. I know you already heard I'm from Jamaica. So when I flip into it, I can't even help it anymore. So the fact is that I was born in Jamaica, and when I saw my mom and dad, they were gone by the time I was 3. That's a tender age. So imagine there must have been a feeling of abandonment. And that was the last memory I have. And the biggest one is when my father, he was my favorite at the time for sure. I just loved my dad. And he was leaving on a jet plane. Right down to before he left, they played the song. I don't know if anybody knows the song. I'm leaving on a jet plane. I don't know when I... Them even play the song. And it's a funny thing because even though I was filled with emotion and crying, deep in myself as a 3-year-old, I knew I wasn't going to see him again for a very long time. I just couldn't verbalize it. But I could feel it because there was a deep sadness inside of me. I absolutely know now as a woman with wise eye that I died. And as a child, that segment of me died, and I just waved until my little shoulders hurt. In them days in Jamaica, it was very fascinating. The plane would take off on this, there was this gigantic runway, and you imagine as a 3-year-old, when you're looking at this thing, it looks enormous, right? And the plane was going off, and I just stood there, and I just kept waving and waving and waving. And as a little girl, it never occurred to me that my father wouldn't be able to see me. In my mind, he was seeing my little hands waving, and I wouldn't stop waving, and the plane became this tiny, tiny speck. And then I realized my life would never be the same. He was gone. I think that is probably the last memory I have. I don't remember when my mom left. There was no significant picture I took, but I definitely remember when my dad left. And my mom left a year after that. So it was pretty rapid that they migrated. Migration is always seems to be pegged with better opportunity. I don't know how much I truly believe that now, that that's actually the best way. I have mixed feelings about that. But for sure, our families would leave the children behind if they have to, and they would migrate for farm work. That was a huge one. That's where my father went. And then they would go to make money to obviously get a better life. So migration was a form of opportunity. I have my opinion on that, and the broken homes it tends to leave behind, and just the children themselves, how their life has been changed. But as we know in life, in my book, every blade of grass moves because of grace. Everything has its place, everything has its time, and everything has its reasons. So in a way, there's a multitude of feelings I have around that subject. But like I said, they do it because they think it's a better opportunity for their family. When my parents left me with my grandparents, my grandmother is what you call a total angel. And my grandfather was himself a very big sacrificer. Because my grandfather had 11 kids with his wife of his own. And then my mom left 4 behind. My auntie had 1. My other auntie have another. So you imagine that's 6 additional kids to 11 people that they have already had, and they were only farmers. So I find people like them, when I think about them, I truly just get a space of reverence or a space of just, wow. You know, it's always a, whoa, how did they do it? And how did they hold on to such beauty and peace? Speaking about my grandmother, my grandfather, however, did not handle it so well. The pressure overtook him, and eventually he did pass away from a stroke, because I think the pressure of maybe being the man and having to go into the woods and plant and bring home the food on his back and on his head. We grew up really a lot like Africa. Is when I was just coming back from Africa. And while there, some of the things I saw, the carrying of the big wood on the head and, you know, the kata and all of that, it was very interesting that I could relate, not just by, you know, observation, but by knowing I was the subject of that. I lived it. I grew up just like that. So in a way, I look at all of that, my grandmother, my granddad, and I just say, always so much love and so much understanding now of what the sacrifice they made to have kept us as children and raised us with their, minimal amount of food that they had, but yet we were so abundant in many ways because the trees, they never stopped giving us fruits, you see. So in a way, I see the whole thing in a different eyes from my wise woman eyes versus when I was a kid. Well, let's talk about how my parents migrating affected us as children and how we related to each other. I really now think that we became violent, exceptionally violent. There's so many incidents I can remember. As soon as my parents left, they took me to a basic school. So I'm somewhere there, 3, 4. And we go to this basic school. Miss Brown was the teacher. I'll never forget Miss Brown. Obviously, she's kind of light-skinish. And we're in Red Hills, and I was crying like crazy. Don't want to go to the school, obviously. And by the time I got to the school, they had to take me out of the school and bring me home because I bit the teacher into bleeding. Like I was like a wild animal. This child, me, was crying and biting up the teacher, just losing it. And, I think about if I should see a young child behaving that way and how it would have registered to me that there is some trauma now. See, awareness is the key. Instead, I got my ass whipped, of course. You go to school, go bite up the teacher. You don't go to school and bite up the teacher. It's just not what you do in those days. And coming home and then being whooped on top of that, you can only imagine how much violence and anger pens up in a child. And then I don't know how to measure or even psychologically analyze how my sisters and brothers took it. I can't speak for them, but I can say the way we related. It wouldn't be abnormal for me to even stab my sister with the scissors in the face. I remember doing that. Now, of course, in one way we'll say, we were provoked or whatever. But there's a gauge in children when you play, when there's not these massive trauma, that you would know that a scissor doesn't belong in your sister's jawline, right? Or in her cheekbone. But in our lives, I think the abandonment set in so hard, and because the family, even my aunts and other relatives, weren't nice to us at all in some ways. Some of them were mean as I remember there were some things they would say, and they don't really think of it as verbally abusive, of course. If anybody know anything about Jamaica parenting back even then, more so, we are, and it's still happening, let's be real, but I think we're much more aware now, but my God, it was brutal. No gauge. And so they would say things to me and my sisters like, your mother pissed you out and fly off like you guys were birds. And it wasn't said that nicely. In Jamaican, it just is rough. Jamaican, una pitney, una like bird, una mother pits on out and gone, fly off like bird. And this is like a child hears this. And what do? We take a picture and we listen and we file this audio. And this is the beginning of crushing the self-esteem. There's no esteem now. You are totally a birdless mama. They're gone. Not even they loved you. And so I think when we hold this thought in our mind, and it didn't come from one auntie or one uncle, it comes, you heard I said there was 11 children of their own who were grown adults some. There were other times where we couldn't go next door to our own uncle's home to sit and watch television because we were not of the level where we had television, but he had a television over as the years went on. We were not allowed to go into his house and watch a television. And what does a child want to do? Of course we want to watch television. Though we only had JBC and ABC or whatever it was. No, it was JBC and I think it was only JBC, what I'm thinking about actually. Only JBC. And for us that was big, to be able to go watch a little Stocky and Ochar, whatever these little things is. Wham, remember the Wham music video? These were big stuff for us and we really wanted to go. And we were not allowed in his space. And it, again, another sense of not only abandonment, but here your own relatives just shooing you like you were a dog or worse. And so we became very much unwanted kids in some ways. We always felt love from our grandmother, for sure. Our grandfather would just cuss. He just come home from, he was so pressured. Every time he come home, you start to hear him from miles away. Just cussing. Uno pitney, uno pit. It was so loud and, wow, it was aggressive and awful. Just every day, he was just cursed. I think that's a big part of why he had a stroke down the line. But again, let's look at pressure. They said, what, pressure busts pipe, right? And if you have 11 children and then another 6 dropped on you and you don't even have money to take care of things, yeah, I could see why he was screaming. The only thing he had as release, I think, was his harmonica. He would play the harmonica, and that was the only piece of time on the trumpet. Yeah, he had a trumpet and a harmonica. And I used to love watching him because I loved him very much. I have a memory of him, too, taking me to his church, and I was so proud to hold his hand and walk with my Vaseline black shoe. It was very shiny, but it would pick up so much dust by the time I get to the church. But I would leave with it polishing Vaseline. And I can remember my little baby feet just taking walks with my grandfather. He was about 6'5". He was a very tall man. And I felt so like, it was as if I had been validated. I held his hand so proud, and I would remember just looking at the shoe, and it was just collecting dust on the front. You know, we live in Red Hills, so the red dirt was just collecting all the way. But man, I was a proud woman. That was a proud day for a child going to, I think it was Methodist church he went to. Yes, Methodist. And we walked all the way through, and I wanted everybody to see me hold my grandfather's hand. Anyway, that was a sidebar. It was definitely nice to be with him that day. But then us as siblings, it was constant war. I remember once my sister, that was a day I think I might, no, it wasn't that day I stuck her with the pen. My sister pushed me down the stairs. We were rough, man. We play hard and we fight hard. There was no gauge. And let's say there was like 10 stairs. She just pushed me and I went face down. And I still have the scar in my face. And I remember once I attacked my little brother. I don't know what he said. But in Jamaica, you say something to somebody and you piss them off. In them days, I can talk for them days. I don't know what too much they're doing now. But you piss us off, and you better be aware that we will pull out a pencil, we'll pull out a knife. Anything we have is a weapon. And I had a pencil, and I stuck it in my brother's third eye. Now, obviously, I didn't know that's his third eye. I didn't even know that that was wrong. In our life, you fight. You just fight. We fought if we had to go down to the road to buy your flour or a little. Them days, they just, and probably still do it. They give you like a quarter pound of sugar. You know, you cut the butter, you get a little piece. You don't really buy the big, gigantic whole of it. And my grandmother would say, go down the road, go down to Bobby's shop, and you want to buy 1 pound of sugar, 1 pound of this, half a pound of this, half. And there would be some, what we call hooligans. It's another set of kids who, by the way, their parenting wasn't on fleek either. Their parent, I don't even know that if they had parents. I can't remember, but I remember enough that there was a gang of them. And when them come out on the road from out of them little valley, you ever hear them saying in Jamaica, murder, she wrote? Well, it's murder time. These kids will try to beat you, take your money. They want to take the grocery. And I had learned that if I can't fight for that grocery and come back with the grocery, you're going to get beaten when you come back without the grocery now. So you have to fight off the neighborhood, what we call, you know, hooligans. And then you go up a little further to the standpipe and there's the dogs. You have to fight off the dogs. One time they catch me and bite me in the foot. I still have the mark on my leg. But this, to me, life was a fight. You fought your way to the store. You get the liquor goods, you fight your way back, you come home, if you have the goods, there's no beating. Then after that, you have your siblings, they just used to tease me. I mean, they would tease me. They call me Blackie, I'm a dark, so no, but me still black, but me did the black. You know, there's black, and then there's black. Me did the black, 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 because I would lay in the sun. And I was worshiping the sun from I was a baby girl. I knew rituals, you see. I didn't understand why I did it so much. So me and the sun was one. I would eat it, breathe it, lay in it. And some say the toe and skin did pretty. But of course, when you're young and they're teasing you and say, look, man, you're black like tar, baby. You're blacky and you're ugly. And once they say this, again, self-esteem go where? And so I would cry. And my only thing I had was to fight. I would fight to say, don't call me so. And I'll cry or fight. Cry and fight, all the above. So I think it made us very violent. And on top of being violent, we loved each other, but we lashed out. We displaced the anger on each other. But there's a good part of this. You see, when we go to school, make a guy try not, no. You lick one, you have to lick all three. We still had a union when we go to the roads, you see. You can't touch one of us, because if you touch one, all four we used to kind of protect our little brother out of it. But let me tell you something. We didn't know if we be the tyrant, because now we beat up the hooligan them. So we make a name for ourselves, you see. It's almost like the cartels. One got to beat up the other to become to survive. Only the fittest of the fittest survive. And so we were unified outside, but inside we were displacing upon each other to survive. It was kind of crazy. And we all slept in one bed. That was the other thing. We didn't have enough board and rooms in the house. It was always being built. And so remember, we sleep like sardine. It was like sardines. So one go this way, one go that way, one go this way, one go that way. And then you can have one down your son, one up here. So. And it was very uncomfortable. And then we have that thing called chinking at the bed. Oh, sorry. Lord of mercy, give me shivers. There was these little insects that, when you pee in the bed, or I think sometimes it doesn't even have to be just a pee, but I think we were peeing on the bed. When you abandon children, and when you have all this, what would you say, displaced wiring, even your body signals when you go to bed, you pee on the bed because you're living in fear. You're in that primal mode, and you're in fight or flight mode all the time, and you literally start wetting the bed. And I remember we all have wet in bed problems. I know it wasn't only me. I know I had it. And the more you have all these kids on the sardine bed, line up and this one a pee down this one a pee, so this one. The bed invites something called chink. I don't know what it's properly called. I just know we call it chink back in the days. And them little tiny insect there, you see, if you mash them, I remember you take them and you mash them, in Jamaica, I went pure Jamaican there, they smell horrible. And these things would a bunch of them would be inside the kaya, that's stuff in the bed. We had back spring, but in the back spring was all these weevily material, and the chinks would hide in there and just live and breathe in there. Oh. Maybe that's why I'm so afraid of insect. I'm gonna like insect all over me. I'm just putting it all together. That could be a very start of why I despise so much insect. It was not nice then. And even though we slept together, we fight hard, we love hard too. And I know that came from the abandonment as well. Yes, I love to talk about this abundance versus poverty business, because when I was little, I really thought we were very, very, very poor. And I always say, when you change lenses, and as a wiser woman now, I evaluate what poverty really is. And of course, I have some different perspective now. But when I was growing up, I can tell you so many things from poverty changed the entire trajectory of my life. One of the ones that come to me was from my health, right? Constipation is something that anyone who has constipation know what I'm talking about. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. When the body is not releasing what is in there, you can feel it, it's in there, you're backed up, you feel like you can't breathe properly. It's just a very uncomfortable feeling. And for years I troubled with constipation. I remember it, I didn't know it as constipation as a child, But I remember there were areas where they would run a wire up my anus to take out my feces. As a child, that's traumatic. And while they're doing that, it's just your belly always hurting you. You're always bind up. And then you'll be eating so much sugar. We are sucking the condensed milk out the can, stealing from the refrigerator is how it felt. Because we had to hide to get some of the milk or whatever, the sugar, whatever we're taking out the fridge. This was warrant to a beating to eat. So we had to sneak behind parents' back, my grandparents' back, and take it out. And so when you go in there to sneak, to suck the milk, you will go up a big load of condensed milk. And that creates so many tapeworms in our body. I mean, Jesus, these long, damn near like 7-foot tapeworm, right? You know what I mean? Just wrap up in the feces. And these things, I remember, they made me not want to use the bathroom. And then there was another one. We had the outdoor bathroom. And the outdoor bathroom is you have to walk a little pathway and it would be dark. The only thing we had to give us light to the bathroom would have been peeny wally. How do you explain peeny wally? A peeny wally is like these little lighted insects. And they come out at night and their bottom is like, has little lights and they go, you know. And so you'd have rows of peeny wally lighting up, and they would light up the pathway for you to go to the bathroom. And at 3 to like 5, and even 5 to 7, I remember this thing. The bath, the outdoor toilet, the all big. For my little body, me remember it being massive. And me know me can drop down in there. The shoulder can go through. So inside, you can look in there, there's like 2 holes. If you imagine like a record player, but there's 2 holes there. And you take off the top, and the smell. Oh. And then you look in, and there's just mountainous amount of poo. Yes, people. Literal. You're looking at it, and it comes up swelling. And you know that if you fall in that, it just, you don't know how far down it go, but you don't know, say, it can swallow you. So the fear within my mind as a little girl to climb up on that thing and sit down and poo, my contraction of my anus got stronger and stronger. And not to mention, if you want to use and defecate in the middle of the night, you not leaving the bed. You learn what I did, how to hold. And so enough of holding and enough of the wrong food from poverty, lots of white flour, white rice, white flour, white yam, white cassava, white hard carbs. The carbohydrates was endless. And the whole body, what I know in my body today and how I feed my body, those are not the things I would eat, because simply my body can't release it. And so it took forever to get over that in my olden days, but my grown days, to now figure out how to re-regulate my body from that trauma of poverty, not having the right food. Now, I remember even my teeth, I still had these big teeth when I was young. But because I was so skinny, they didn't fit in my mouth. So them call me buck teeth. Because the teeth are, my come out. And the mouth lickle. And now I look back, I was like, holy crap, that was some form of malnutrition. It's not something I probably think my grandmother would want to hear. My little foot, them maga, man, maga like tread. These are malnutrition. And when you look at how the teeth would be buck, that is a sign of malnutrition. I didn't have the right amount of calcium, the right amount of balance in my body. And so I think the poverty thing was rough. We had to kill bird to eat. I remember, how does a little girl know how to build a slingshot and point that sucker in the sky, anticipate a bird and shoot that sucker out the sky, and roast him and eat him with jackfruit seed? This was a meal. And we did that quite often, quite often. So in a way, you have that side of the coin, and then you have the other side of the coin where there is jackfruit tree, breadfruit tree, almond tree, coffee beans, pimento. There was abundance amount of fruits and vegetables there. But they were also for sale too, right? You have to take it. And my grandmother had to bring them downtown to the market. I think they call it, I don't remember the market them call it now in Jamaica, but that same market that they're going. And my grandmother would go to the marketplace in Kingston, and she would, I still try to remember the marketplace, but it was a big thing where she would take all of the fruits off the tree. We'll dry the pimento, we'll dry the coffee, we beat the coffee, we ground the coffee, we sieve the coffee, we beat the chocolate in a mortar, beat it, rub it and make it into a diamond shape. And she would take all these goods down into Carnation, that are the market, me I try to remember, Carnation Market, and she would sell this thing. And this was how she would then supply us with going to school and for us to eat as a family. And all the money we know, is in my grandmother's tread bag. How do you say tread bag? I don't know how to say a tread bag in English, but it's like a little sack. But the sack no bigger than this. And here's this family of how many people living off this sack. And so what I knew of money was this little thread bag. And grandmother would draw the thread in on tight 2-3 times so we can't go in there to steal it. Because we'll go in there and take out what we want too, not knowing that this is really the extent of our abundance per se in money, in cash dollars, in liquid cash. And so my grandmother would find all these little places to hide the money. Says she can't keep it away from her fingers. Inevitably we find it. We dig until we find a little thread bag. And then we'll try to take out this one, take out a little, share it with the other one. And it's like stealing from your own and stealing so young. Money was something you look at as it was never there. It was scarce. And if you want something, you have to steal it from a thread bag. Until we learn that we could develop skills, and mine was to iron clothes. I knew that I had a meticulous thing. And so my auntie, grand-auntie, which is my grandmother's sister, she had a shop and all this stuff, and she invited me to come and iron the clothes. I think I was probably about 8 or so, and I could start ironing her clothes. And she would give me money, and she had a shop. We could work in the shop and measure the flour and so on and sell for her, and you can get money. And then I know I can braid the hair and get money. And once I understood that I can earn my own money, needless to tell you, sir, that's why I'm an entrepreneur today from I was 21. All of these things, I think, from your childhood are means of helping you to find who you are or remember who you are and to find how you can survive and then thrive in this earth place, So I hope I answer all those questions in those stories, but to come back to the abundance of it all is that the abundance of the trees were there. And though we were suffering, I'm not going to try to pretty it up, we definitely had like a built-in joy. There was a built-in kind of like oblivious to the poverty behavior. We never have enough shoes or anything like that. As a matter of fact, today I enjoy going barefoot. You have to actually remind me to bring my shoes when I go someplace and I take off the shoes and I forget it. I will just walk out barefoot. Yet I was so ashamed when I was a child because I had to walk barefoot. So I think there's lots to be learned in all these lessons. And when the bus would come, and we have to go carry the big cutter and the big load of food and pick up the wood we had to walk miles to go chop wood and bring wood to build fire and cook on the outside fire. And all of this journey, there would be a bus on the road. And the bus would inevitably have some children in there from with school. Well, as a child, we don't want them to see we. Because we're on the road barefoot. We can't wear school shoes to go pick up wood and all this, so we have to run barefoot. And listen, you want to say man scatter? We hear that bus, we can hear the bus. We literally can hear the bus from a half a mile or more. We trained our ear to be able to hear the different sounds of which car, whose car, all of that. We could hear when our uncle vehicle is coming versus the truck or the bus, sir. And we will start, we load in at the middle of the bush, then we hide our load, and man scatter. fastest man, and we just chuck over the wall. And you know, we just dive over and we just crouch into like little small up ourselves. And we hide so that we would not be seen. Actually, that made me emotional. And I wouldn't have told you that could make me emotional. But that's to show you how deep some of these things are buried. But we hide. We didn't want to be seen barefoot and carrying things from the bushes so we can survive.